Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. This is Breeze with Spiritual Metaphysics. Um, I have not done a live show for you guys, and it's not that I have forgotten about you, but I was coming up with textual content, which was really good, and I was working my other pages that I have, getting around to the ones that are growing, and this one seems to be growing quite a bit, so it's exciting. So my name is Ray Easton. I started this page, Bakersfield Metaphysics, for people here in Bakersfield who just want to talk, not necessarily about like the religious or spiritual aspect of the metaphysical realm or world, but more so the science behind it, right? The actual physics, the dynamics, the what is it? The measurable things that can be done in order to produce a certain effect in the world and in your world. And that requires looking at life under a different lens, having different experiences, and doing a lot of recording, paying a lot of attention, and looking for the little subtle anomalies that happen in life, the little things that kind of are unnormal, but yet they become normal because you focus on them more, and those events collect more until now you've got this collective um, uh, um, solidification of this energy, right? So it's the goal of this page is not to present this through the lens of an esoteric, spiritual, religious, but more so maybe from a esoteric logic science, right? Because back in the old days, this was an actual science, something that could be measured and done, and for the most part could be replicated with various um, things that are done, certain mechanics, right? So Bakersfield Metaphysics is essentially that. So metaphysics, what does that actually mean, right? Before we get started, metaphysics. Meta means like almost, what was it? Not physical, right? And then physical means physical, right? So it's sort of an oxymoron. Kind of the word antithesis comes to mind, an opposite, right? But that's kind of how our world and our universe is. It is a combination of the things that we cannot see and the things that we can see, right? So it is exactly metaphysical, right? So that's essentially what this is about. Now, just because it's Bakersfield Metaphysical doesn't mean that other people can't, from other territories or other cities, states, countries, it doesn't mean that you can't come in and participate. That's not what it means at all. It's just I wanted to start a community for people locally here, because that seems to be how you create anything or make any sort of dent or change in things. You start locally and then it expands naturally, right? So I'm not an overly serious person, even though in the moment I seem to be overly serious. This is particularly a avid interest of mine. I've been doing this for over 20, 25 years. It's gotten incrementally more as I've gotten older. I've seen many more cycles, and when you see more cycles, you can come to conclusions about things. And if you rate those experiences against a sort of metric, you can see if it's reality or not, if it's actually real or not, if it actually affects the physical world or not, right? So age does actually add to your ability and your belief to discern the metaphysics in life and trying to understand the dynamics of things. And that's kind of where this show goes. This particular show is about, I need to make sure the microphone is on. This particular show, I was thinking, what would I talk about, right? Because sometimes this stuff is so abstract, you could just kind of go on, or just talk about something that people just really don't understand, right? Because it's not base enough. And then I've been working with some people, I've been helping some people, I've been getting back into the business of, not the business, I say the business, right? Because it's the great work, right? I've been getting back into the work of helping people on a subtle, esoteric, meta level, right? And it's sort of got my brain and my system kind of going again, right? And I was just telling someone they were kind of new to this environment, and they were reaching for some higher information. And I was like, look, just kind of learn the basics, right? Learn some preliminary stuff, learn some base stuff, because all that higher stuff is built on top of the lower stuff. You can't reach for the higher stuff without having a firm understanding and foundation of the base stuff, right? It's the whole story of what Kid Icarus, or Icarus and Daedalus, and Icarus reaching too far for the sun, not having a firm foundation, and then plummeting to his death, right? You gotta love a great Greek tragedy. They all kind of end in tragedy, don't they? Yeah. So you have to have a foundation, right? And that's what this is about. The metaphysical part is about having a foundation. So the show is about numbers, numerology, right? Numbers. Even though today we use numbers for different reasons, like whether it be for counting, money, whether it be for credit cards, or whether it be bank accounts, or arbitrary things that really don't mean anything, numbers actually have a systematic, metaphysical a dynamic in our world and in the universe, right? And that's kind of why on the beginning of when you come to the Bigger Tool Metaphysics page, you see that 369 there. And if some of you are familiar with that 369, you kind of know what it resonates with. Those particular numbers represent certain things in the universe. Even Nikola Tesla said that something about how if you understood the numbers 369, you would understand the keys of the universe. But he just didn't say why or what, right? I mean, it's kind of arbitrary and up in the air when you throw something out there like that. But I completely understand, right? So basically, we want to start with numerology. Numerology is really cool. When I first got started in this, I learned symbology, which are symbols. I learned numerology, which are numbers. I learned colors, and I think those were the three. So your numbers, both regular numbers and also the Roman numeral, and also colors and archetypes and symbols, right? So we'll start this off with numerology, because I think numbers are great. Numerology is great because it's a base logic, which is a number. Everybody can understand the number, but then there is a metaphysical or an esoteric attachment to those particular numbers and what they resonate with. A perfect example, last couple of days I've been seeing a bunch of ones around me, whether it be the clock is at 1:11 or 11:11, or for example, I was talking to a friend and she kept showing me 11:11 on her side, and I just kind of made fun, and I was like, well, glad to know that my my energy reaches across time zones, because she's in the South and I'm here in California. So I just kind of was making fun of that. But numbers do mean something. When you see a bunch of numbers around you, or numbers that happen all the time, then it usually means that those numbers are gravitating towards you. And the reason being, because if you have to remember at a core how our universe works, and therefore everything in the universe and how it works, including ourselves, right? So at a base, you have to remember at a core, if you don't remember anything else, remember this. And you learned this in school, right? Like energy is attracted to, exactly, like energy, right? So anything like something is attracted to it through this sort of magnetic magnetism or polarity, right? It's just things in the universe, because our universe is so fluidic, right? I mean, it's like a big ocean, but with a gas that's called the ether, or the universe itself, right? But things kind of drift, kind of like water, right? So things can drift in this fluidic, gaseous state, right? So like energy can be through this mechanism that this energy is in. They can sort of gravitate to one another via some sort of like energy magnetic system, and that's kind of how numbers work. So if you're going through something like I'm going through some new beginnings right now, right? On a lot of levels. That's why the ones are popping up, a lot of ones. I like to work with some esoteric spiritual systems to sort of complement what I do. So, for example, I use the tarot tarot cards in order to get an energy feel, get some confirmation as far as what I'm working on. And I pulled, last night? Yeah, last night. I pulled the Wheel of Fortune card. Well, as you know, Wheel of Fortune card is the number 10, right? Number 1 and the number 0. So 1 represents beginning, 0 represents completion. And this is kind of where everything starts, right? This one and this zero, right? It's where everything starts. So with zeros, you have almost like the womb of the universe, or the womb that all things are born from. You could even equate this to like the ideals behind the dragons and the dragon egg, right? It's a complete embodied essence, right? It has something within it. It's the beginning and the end. So zeros are symbolic of a beginning and an end because they're cyclical. So when you draw a zero, it has no beginning and it has no end, right? So that's what zeros represent. It is the beginning of everything. It is that which is before conceptualization or formation in this particular world or space. It is that which is between the spaces. It's where things start. It's where things go back to. It's where life springs from. It's where life goes back to. So it's like the kind of like the I don't want to say alpha omega, but where everything goes back to and comes to. It's like the link between all the numbers. And then after you have you have the number zero, right? After the number zero, what springs from the nothing, and this is where this understanding comes from. What springs from the nothing, or the zero, springs the number, or the first thing, or number one, right? So you have the number one, which represents, like I said before, beginnings. It represents new beginnings, newness, things starting over, that which is coming from the zero or from the womb to start anew and afresh, right? To start anew. And as you're going, and you kind of have to see it as if you're working these systems, you're working to, if you're using this to be, to sort of be a little bit of a scientist, then you're tracking this. If you're tracking these numbers, right? So you're going from a zero all the way through, right? So this is progressional, right? So you got your zero and you have your one, and after your one, your beginnings, after you've started something new in your life or whatever it is you're doing, you go to a point where now you are envisioning. You're not really doing with one. It's more so there's the beginning seeds, your ideas or your thoughts after the zero, which is the sort of creation point. Then the ideas or thoughts start to formulate, and that's number one, right? And number two is envisioning with the mind, which is seeing, which is the pairing up of the initial one and then a dualistic one. And if you've worked with any type of systems, you know, in most spiritual religious systems, there's a duality, right? There's a left and a right. There's a male and a female. There's these two poles, right? And that's essentially what the number two is. It's these two balanced poles. So now you have this idea that was in the womb that now sprung forth and had the initial stages of thought. Now is paired up with something that might be able to complement it and allow it to be more so born, right? This idea. So let's just use the idea or example of ideas. That's just more, it might be more easy for me because I can see this in my head, right? But let's just say we're talking about how an idea springs forth, right? How we have ideas. This is some thick stuff, so if it gets kind of confusing, just comment below and say, hey, I didn't understand that. But we're going to take it from the concept of we're creating thoughts or ideas. We're following the process of how things go from not existing as a thought or idea within us to a thought or idea coming to life and going through this cycle, right? Because this is reminiscent of everything that will happen in life adhering to this number system. So once you can understand on a subtle level how the numbers work, then you'll be able to apply this mechanism, this mechanic, to other aspects and then run an experiment there, and you'll see how those numbers and how that system works in that environment. Essentially, you are a scientist, a meta-scientist, a metaphysical scientist, right? Which sounds really cool. It actually kind of is, but it's very elusive because a lot of this stuff is unseen, and you're using various systems to sort of try to understand what cannot be seen, right? That's where meditation comes in. Allows a lot of this stuff to be understood under a meditative light, and then it makes more sense when you come out of it. But anyways, back to the numbers, right? Okay, so zero, you have the womb. You have that which is not formed or born yet, but is about to, which is the one, right? The one, the egg cracks, or the life comes from out of the zero or the womb, and you've got the first emanation of that, right? And then, like all things in the universe, every one thing needs to pair up with something to have the duality, right? So now you've got these two poles, which in our world, poles create a sort of gravitational or magnetic pull. So if you've got poles, kind of like we have a North Pole and a South Pole, these magnetic poles or pulls kind of pull back and forth and kind of cause something to happen when those two things are together, right? And so from two, now we have three, which is expression. So three is taking those two poles and then adding a third, right? And if you ever worked with the Kaballah, the Tree of Life, or any of these systems, you know there's the right path, the left path, and then the middle path, right? So you've got the left, the right, and then the middle. And that's essentially what this three represents. It's where you have understood the one side that you were born from, right? That your side, and you also paired it up with a opposite maybe, right? Because we learn through opposition. We don't learn when we're happy. We don't learn when things are going the way that we want them to go. We learn when there is opposition, and we have to go through the fire in order to in order to get through it. And through that fire, through that is where you learn things if you're paying attention. If you just go through it and you just feel the pain and you don't really look for what's causing this, what's making this happen, then you're just going to go through the pain and not really going to see and feel the answers that are latent in that pain, right? So with your threes, you've got the left, the right, and then what happens, the beautiful thing about life, right, is when you have yourself and you pair yourself up with your opposite, something magical happens. And what happens is a third part of you is created, right? And why? How? Well, simply because you were at a state when you were born, or when you had this idea, and it was a particular way, the way that you thought, right? It could have been because the ego or your mind created, right? Well, then you had to pair it up with something else, which was reality. Pairing your idea or yourself up with something in life that resonates with it, that allows it to come to life, right? Well, when you do that, you create instantly a third energy, which is the left and the right blended into you. So this could be ideas. It could be you have an idea to do something, to start something, to help somebody, right? You have your idea, and then you actually have to integrate it into life. You have to work with this person. You've got to find the systems. You have to find the tools that you'll need in order to do this, right? Well, that creates you becoming a different person, because now you're incorporating this other aspect into the first. So now you become a third, right? And this three is what's called, or what's known as the Trinity, right? And it's where you hear in all these systems, all these occult and spiritual and religious systems about this Trinity. And that's exactly what the Trinity is, if you want to break it down. It is the left, the right, and the middle. It's what they call in the Tree of Life, where you've got the Sephiras, and you've got you've got Keter, which is the crown, and you've got Binah, which is I believe it's the mother, but I think it's on the left side, and then you've got Kokma, which is on the right side, because the right side is supposed to be the right hand of God, or the fiery right hand of God, right? So you've got these three, and these three form. Well, this is getting a little bit deep, but you've got the left and the right, and then when you blend information, you become a third person. You have a third perspective about things, right? And that's where your heart starts to express things. That's where your mind starts to express, because now you actually have a idea, a thought that is the left, what you wanted, the right, what the world has to offer, and this third where they're married or blended together, right? Because that's how you create. I had about a year or so ago, I was working with some light energy, and I was meditating with a lot of candles, and one day I was in the shower, and then I heard something in my head, and it was basically words of light, and then it kind of and some stuff came to me, and a lot of the stuff kind of started making a little more sense and becoming more cohesive and stuff like that. But and from threes, basically, once you have the left and the right blended into the third, that is when you can then begin to form things, construct, which is the number 4, right? Number 4 is planning, constructing, formation, solidity, solidarity. It's where your emotional energy, which is of three, which is why a lot of systems relate this three also to a female figure, to a goddess or whatever. The next stage after the expression of the heart or of the self or of the goddess or of the whatever is the physical manifestation, right? Because then the heart can actually start to create things, right? You start to use constructs in this world, whether it be physical tools, whether it be people, whether it be whatever, to create something, right? Because now you have your idea, you have what the world will offer, what the world has, and the blended knowledge that you have, pairing that up with the tools in life that actually make it happen, to actually build or make something, right? And that's what the number fours are, which is why those are usually linked to the Martian energy, Mars, Aries formation. The number three is usually linked to the goddess energy, Venus. The two, it's either the high priestess or the moon, depending on if you work with the tarot systems, right? So then after four, we have the number five, right? And the number five is representative of change. And as you're walking these numbers from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, each one has a different lesson or a different learning enclosed in it. And the number five, after you have formed or created something physical through the tools in this world because of the first few stages, then you can actually create change in this world, because now you have a tool, you have something that you made, and when you have something that you've made, then you can actually wield it. You can show people. You show people they want it. If you wield it, people might either fear you or they might love you. You have created something that did not exist. It is now existent, and now you physically affect people's thoughts, their minds. Even with a pencil or a crayon, you show it to someone and they start thinking about it. Well, if it wasn't there, if it was not created, that thought wouldn't be there. And as simple as that sounds, if you apply that to a lot of the things that you do, your energy work, then you'll be able to, what I called walking energy, right? Walking energy from concept, from thought to manifestation, which it can be done. You just have to be slow and nurturing. You can't rush anything, right? The universe isn't a rush for anybody. It's got its own mechanism. It's got its own what is it? Its own speed that it goes at, and those things speed up. They ebb and they flow like all things. But you have to have patience when working with these systems, right? So the number five is change, where you can actually create change in this world. Number six would be adjustment, right? Adjustments. So after you have your number five is when you made a change because you created something and you were able to wield it or show it, whether it be an idea or a thought or whatever, right? Sixes are more about adjustment, whereas fives are about change. Now, what's the difference? I used to always get into confrontations and arguments with people over this, right? Because they'd be like, well, that's a change. I'd be like, no, that's not really a change. That's an adjustment. And they'd be like, well, what's the difference? And I'd be like, well, let me tell you, right? Well, a change is when something went from non-existent to existing, or more so when it went from one form to another. That's a change, when it doesn't look the same. Like the energy, right? The energy went from being in the ether, in the energetic realm, and then you created something here. You changed the very molecules of it from taking it from the ether and creating it here. That was a change. That energy is still here. It just went from here to here. That's a change. Now, if you adjusted or modified or added on to it or just tweaked it a bit, but it's still inherently the same, then it's not a change, it's an adjustment. And as you're walking energy and as you're going through this number system of numerology, and I say walking energy because I kind of use this when I walk energy, right? But when you're looking at the number system and you go from changing something, you don't want to continue to change something, right? Because then it never gets to grow, right? Think about if you're growing a plant or, like I said, an idea or a thought, right? You don't want it to continuously change. You want it to get to a point where it's changed from seedling into sprouting plant or flower, but you don't want it to keep changing. You want it to grow. You want it to adjust, just grow into itself, right? And that's what the six is. It's the adjustment. In the tarot, this is like the Lover's card, which a lot of people equate to lovers or relationships, but to the alchemist or the metaphysician, It actually represents at a base level. It represents things coming together to form something else. But the independent things, like say for instance, if you have a tree, and then that tree had, I don't know, it had, I'm kind of bad with these. But then let's just say, for instance, it had sun and moon around it, and also had water and grass, and animals were around it, and they're eating stuff, and they're pooping and stuff like that, right? So all these things, all these many things, are actually a part of this one tree, right? So that's kind of what the 6 means. It's acknowledging that all these other things, these separate things, are actually still a part of this one. And if you look in some cards, like there's a particular card deck that I loved. It's the I think it's the O'Connelly. It's the Witch's Tarot, which I used to use a long time ago. But for this particular card, it shows a man and a woman, and then it shows a deity above them. And I thought that'd be the most incredible thing when I first saw it, because it was totally different from anything else that I had watched or read. It didn't show just 2 people falling in love. It showed 2 people being in love, but the woman looking up at the deity opened their arms up to everybody, and the man looking at the woman. And I was just like, well, this is interesting, right? So what it meant was, it was more of a higher trine from the 3 to the 6. And like I said, remember, 3s, 6s, and 9s have some sort of resonance, right? They mean something. 3 is the expression. 6 is the double expression, right? It's, like I said, 2s, when you pair up 1 and 2. This can even happen with numbers that are higher than 1, right? And if you've already guessed it, the number 9 is the same way. It's 3 trine, 3 triple, right? So 3, 6s, and 9s, they resonate with this Trinity amplification. So with the number 6, after we have our adjustment, right, and whatever it is we're doing or growing, then we have to have number 7, which is belief. Number 7s represent belief in things that you cannot see. Maybe you can feel or touch, but not necessarily with your hands, maybe with your mind, maybe with your heart. After you have created whatever it is you were creating, you've changed it, and it's adjusting, you need to have belief and let it grow. You need to be able to, and this is where things get kind of hairy. Not really, but they kind of do. Where after you've created this thing, this idea or thought, you need to now plant it, or know that it's planted in the ether, in the universe, this thing that loves things to grow, that feeds things to grow, including our minds, right? You need to let your idea or thought or your action sit in this etheric, and then let the roots kind of soak it in, and believe and know that there is a system behind the scenes that is going to facilitate the growth of this thing, right? So that is what the 7s represent, the belief in that which you don't know, but you still know nonetheless, right? And number 8, which I love number 8s, right? Number 8s, after you have belief in something, what do you think you have? Once you have belief, we have power, right? And so the number 8 represents power. It represents the ability to control a situation. Because once you have belief in something, once you've created a system, once you've created, you have an idea or created an actual construct, and you've let it grow through the belief, you've let life and people or whatever it is come in and reinforce it and allow it to grow, then you have power because you have something. You're going to duplicate it, you're going to replicate it, but most importantly, you have wisdom, you have knowledge. You can now do this again, or you can teach others to do it, but you have experience, and that is the most important thing, is being able to see how things go from 0 to 8 and knowing, right? Not just arbitrarily doing work and not knowing how this stuff works. Sorry, I'm laughing because I was talking to somebody earlier. I'm not going to get into it. They just didn't have a clue, and they were coming unglued on me about something. I'm just like, remove. So anyways, and then this brings us to the number 9. There's that number, right? The number 9. The number 9 represents completion. Some have related it to the number of God because it is it is the last number. We don't go to 10. We don't go to 11. What happens is number 9 is completion. It is the number 9 and the number 6 are almost kind of the same. One's right side up, one's upside down. And they're more so than just numbers. They actually represent a curl. And one is curling inwards and one is curling outwards. And what this represents is how the nature or the energy of what some would call God, or that energy that is at the core of everything, of how it gives life to things. Now, to give life, you curl outwards. So it would be the number 6, right? I think it would be number 6, to curl outward. And that's essentially like birth, right? And some have equated the number 6 to being linked to the house of Cancer, the zodiacal sign of Cancer, which is the sign of man, which would mean that's the sign that people are born from, which would be the house of Cancer, which is number 6. The number 9 would be the exact opposite, because men are kind of at the opposite. Men and women are at the opposite of the gods and the goddesses, right? So the 9 would represent the god or the goddess, or this deity, this higher self, which is also representative of Capricorn. And so when you put 6 and 9 together, you kind of get a yin yang, and that's kind of what that's reminiscent of. And also when you pair Cancer and Capricorn together, you kind of get a dynamic there too, of human god type. And if it's a yin yang, it means that the two are sort of connected. And so after 9, after you've reached completion of a particular stage, whether it be an idea you've come to completion on, or a task or a project or something physical, then what happens is you'll hit, like I did last night, and you'll get like a number 10. Well, the 10 is not the number 10. It's actually 1 and 0 put together. It means you completed you came to completion on this idea or this energy you were walking. And now you're starting again with number 1, but there was a completion attached to it. It's almost like life or the universe saying, okay, we acknowledge that you completed this. Here's your 0. This is the completion symbol. You got a completion badge. But you're beginning again. So you're not a number 1. No, you're not number 1. You're a number 10. You're a 10. And that's really what the numbers represent, going from 0 all the way up to 9, and then having the 1 and the 0. You can do 11s, and that's just reiterations of those numbers. Any combination, 1 and 1, 2 and 1, 3 and 1. But then they all add up and they break back down. So even if you have 11, you add it up, you break it down, it becomes a 2. All numbers add up and then they break back down. They all break down to a core. And what they also found was that the number 9, no matter how many times you add it up or multiply it, any number always breaks back down to 9. I believe the number 3 was the same way. I don't think the 6 was, but I think 3 and 9 were. 6 I'm not so sure about. 6 was is a different one. But that's it in a nutshell. That's numerology. That's a basic, my simple version of numerology. You can apply these principles to many aspects of your life, especially if you start seeing these numbers around you. Like I said, I started seeing 11s because I have a lot of beginnings going around. I love seeing some 9s because I love coming to conclusions on stuff, and I love stuff coming to an end, especially when you're in the middle of a very rough and rocky or patchy part of your life, and you're just like, come on, 9s. I just want out of this, right? But 9s are good. But if you rush out, if you don't walk that path slow and steady and absorb the information inside of it, it just won't matter. You'll end up in a loop back doing whatever it was you didn't like. You won't understand the lesson in it. That's really what the numbers do. They help you sort of gauge where you're going. So I hope that made sense. I hope that was fun. I hope that it was entertaining. My name is Ray Eason. I'm with Bakersfield Metaphysics. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. Go ahead and click like down there. If you have any comments, any questions about numbers or numerology, go ahead and leave a comment down there. Hit me up in Messenger if you want a little bit more, you have an instant question or something like that. If you know anybody that might be interested in this information, interested in metaphysics, interested in learning life, or just kind of just want to know some cool stuff, go ahead and share the page off to them. Let them know. And I look forward to delivering content to you guys. My name's Ray Eason. Thanks for watching. I love you guys. This is some fun stuff. We're going to try to do fun, exciting stuff. I might do like symbology next, but that's a little bit too abstract. Maybe I don't know. I have to think about it. Maybe astrology. Astrology might be cool. What do you think? Do you want to see astrology next, or do you want to see like colors or symbology, or just let me know. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.